And I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you. There's Jonathan, guys logging in.
Hi,
So
Sherry. Thank you.
before we start our meeting, I
Right.
just want to go ahead and if everyone can just go ahead and introduce yourself, um, just for record purposes, and then what committee you represent or organization you represent. So I'll start with myself. I'm Thomas John Gill, an educational assistant here at Kohala High School, and I'm facilitating the meeting this evening.
Brenda, you want to go? I'll go in order of how I see you on my screen.
I'm Brenda Swan. I am the PCNC at Kohala High School and the secretary of the SCC.
Jess.
Jessica Patel. I am a teacher and vice chair of SCC.
And Ross.
All right, Ross Paget, Community School Manager, representing the community side of SCC.
Davian.
Hi, I'm Davian Kama. I work with Ross in the Piliopaa program and Partners in Development.
And Crystal. I'm thinking unknown as Crystal.
Hi, so I'm Crystal. I guess I'm with Hawaii Community Federal Credit Union. I'm the community rep and also the parent rep.
And Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Kesey. I'm the SASA at this school, and I am classified rep forever.
And Melody.
Hi, I'm Melody Neatfeld. I'm the registrar at the school, and I believe I'm the certified rep. Is that correct? Teacher rep, something like that.
Yeah, teacher rep.
Teacher rep. Okay, thanks.
Perfect. And Iris.
Hi, I'm Iris Studios. I'm student council president and the student rep.
And Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry Barch, and I am the parent rep.
And I am Amy Stafford, proud principal at Kohala High School. Extremely proud today because of our Culinary 1 students coming and presenting and serving lunch to all of the principals at their meeting today. It was fabulous. Everybody was blown away.
It smelled so good in that room when I was subbing. I was totally jealous of y'all.
They were so professional. They did great.
Well, again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Looking over at our agenda, we are carrying over items that we had from last meeting that we carried over to this meeting. So starting off with old business, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Stafford, who's going to start off with Q1 attendance and academics. Ms. Stafford?
Perfect, TJ. And if it's okay, I'm going to go, I have a presentation for my 3 pieces, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Sorry, it was not at the beginning. There we go. All right, just making sure everybody can see it. So I'm not at school. I don't have my 2 screens. So if you need me, just don't wave, snap, or say, hey, I have a question, because I'm going to be on another screen, so I can't see you guys. That's the only way I can move from slide to slide. All right, so just a quick rundown, because I did add in some pieces that are pertinent to the data that we're going to be going over. So I'll be just reviewing some current attendance numbers, some information about some packets that were mailed home this week with some data in them, a snapshot of our comprehensive needs assessment, which we turned in already, which then leads to our salaried financial plan and some additions that we're going to be making, things that we'll be focusing on, which is due next week. And then just a quick reminder about the principal's coffee talk and ways everybody can stay involved. So right now, doing our comprehensive needs assessment, there's a lot of data to review. And so in looking at last year's data, this 89.33% was our overall daily attendance rate. So that was our average for last year, the number of students or the percentage of students that we had in school on a daily basis. And with COVID and a lot of the time being online distance learning, our daily attendance rate did drop. But you can see for this year, we're looking at 87.16% so far on where we stand. And each month, Miley gives me an update each month, and that's just slowly been declining. So we'll talk about a few things that we're going to be trying to do in semester 2. But what I did take from this, and I'd like some feedback on what you think, looking at the current data of our students that are on track, and so that means they have no Fs as of the last quarter report, and their attendance is greater than 95%. That is 86.87% of our student population. So looking at our current attendance of 87.16 and the students that are on track, that does show me that most of our students who are attending school are, I don't know why I put doing, are on track. So they're, they have good attendance, they're here at school, and they are doing well with their grades and being where they need to be. The problem is this lower number and the number of students that we have that are chronically absent with 15 or more absences. I don't have accurate data on that yet because we are updating over the break the absences that were COVID related. And once we do that, we'll have a better picture of those students that are absent for 15 or more days and for reasons that we're not aware of. They're just not coming to school, they're not calling, they're not giving doctor's notes. And those are some things we're going to be discussing on another slide. Any thoughts about our current numbers right now around on track and attendance before I go into a little more information?
I would like to just add one thing regarding the 2020-21, 89.33% attendance. I feel that a lot of that was due to the large number of students, 85 students alone who were on SLS, full distance learners. If these students did not log in at any point during the daytime hours from 8 until 3 o'clock, they were considered absent for the whole day. So the issue is then we have students that do log on, but they log on later in the day, for instance, at 6 o'clock p.m., and they may work 5 or 6 hours on SLS and do just fine academically, but their attendance is going to be very poor. And I think that's a reflection of what's happening in the 2020-2021 school year. And that's probably why we see this drop.
That's a really good thing to point out because a lot of our families that chose the distance learning did so because either the students were working during the day, it was difficult for them because of other students in the home that were needing help during the day. And so our students would help with that and do their own work later at night. And so we did have quite a few students that were successful, but just not logging in during regular school hours. And for some of our families, that was another reason why they chose that option, was because they had more flexibility with the time they could log on. Any other thoughts on this slide? And TJ, if you can capture, or sorry, Brenda, if you can capture that in the minutes, then I can add it to this slide as well. So in regards to attendance for this year, things that we're still struggling with and that we continue to have conversations about with staff are students getting to school by 8 o'clock. Yes, I answer when students say, I have to come to homeroom. We've been saying this all year. School starts at 8 o'clock. Yes, homeroom is mandatory. Because it's not a section, those first 15 minutes that they get an official letter grade in, A lot of them just take that opportunity to get to school a little bit slower and then come in during their first or second period class. So we're going to be working on that next year. Or next semester, I mean, we do have some students that are disappearing during classes or showing up late. So if they don't make it during that homeroom time, they may struggle in 10, 20, even 30 minutes late, and things that after that for their first period class. Some things we are hearing from families, some are, well, they just can't get out of bed. They have a hard time getting going in the morning. It's hard to motivate them in the morning. And so parents are struggling to know what to do to get their kids to school on time. We do have some students that families have reached out because they do have some deeper motivational difficulties that are related to social emotional trauma, or things that are going on at home that truly do make it harder for them to get to school on time. But with some coaxing and having that little bit of extra time, they can get to school. And so we're working on that and trying to provide some positive incentives next semester. Brenda's going to help me with that, to get students here on time. I just met with some people from Hapuna Prince. Actually, it's the Weston now at Hapuna. And they're looking to work with our school, probably not until next school year. But one of the main things that they're working on is just those professional skills and relating for students what they're doing in school, how it relates to the real world, which could be a huge help for us, because hearing it from teachers, hearing it from parents, hearing it from me that they need to get to school on time, it's just like, But so many employers that I've talked with, including the gentleman that I met with this morning, talked about, just the importance of getting to work on time, being there on time. And that doesn't mean you can actually show up on the premises around 8 o'clock. You actually have to get there a little bit earlier to park, to allow for the time it takes you to walk, to check in, all of those types of things. So those are pieces that they would be working on with our students as well. And we also have students where, really trying to hold them more accountable to not taking their cell phones and backpacks with them to the restroom, which has gotten better. But now they'll make little stops along the way. If we have visiting teachers on campus, if they see someone's door open, they see a friend in class, they're making stops along the way, which really, holds teachers more accountable to moving students along and making sure they're getting to where they need to be. So some of the things we're looking to do during semester 2, we are catching up over the break. So excused absences due to COVID will be updated before report cards are printed, so that families will have a more accurate attendance count and know which of those absences are excused. We'll be reviewing the attendance policies with students, families, and staff, and making sure that everyone's aware of the expectations. Getting more timely reports out to families about attendance. So again, that's something else that Brenda and I have been talking about, and that she's going to help me with, just in making sure teachers are following the protocols with what their responsibilities are for when students are absent for so many days, and then when it gets forwarded to us so we can follow up with families. We will have letters of warning going out to families for students who have 15 plus unexcused absences. So that's, you haven't communicated to us at all. We have no idea why you have those 15 absences. And trying to also provide some incentives for coming to school on time and attending all of your classes. And more will be coming on that, but that's something that Brenda's working with me on. Kind of like a secret shopper kind of thing where, the starting at 7 o'clock, every 10th student that shows up and is there would get a gift card, or every 20th student would get a $20 gift card. We'd be pooling random students, and if you have a good attendance record, you might be able to pick from some type of a prize basket or spin a prize wheel. So really just trying to take that positive approach to get them here, to start helping develop that habit, because now is the time they need to develop that habit. Once they leave us, it's already a bit more solidified, and they don't have anyone who's reminding them and providing positive reminders. It's just, you've been late to work twice. Sorry, you're cut. So we also talked about possibly providing an opportunity for parents to sign up if they would like a call if their child shows up late to school, because we have some students who ride the bus whose parents drop them off between 7:20 and 7:30, and then they're not getting to school until 8:30. And parents may not necessarily be aware of this. They might get a call that their child didn't attend homeroom or was late to period one. But I know a lot of our students, when I've gotten report backs from families or called, they've said, oh, well, they told me that the teacher marked them wrong, or that they had a meeting with the teacher and they showed up late and the teacher didn't change it, something like that. So we want to kind of try to put an end to that. And I've even had some families, I've called them or texted and said, oh, just making sure this doesn't become a habit. I think so and so was trying to skip out on the first class to avoid something because he just got here at recess time, and they're like, what? So they didn't know. And even though there's calls coming home, or text, they may not be seeing those because they're just so busy with work. So we're looking to have that as an option for families to sign into as well. And Brenda, with her beautiful radio voice, would be the nice voice that they would hear, just giving them a friendly call about attendance or tardies. So any thoughts on any of that, or even additional suggestions? Because we're always open to suggestions, especially because a lot of you talk to our families. Irish, you are a student at the school. You hear what other people are saying about getting to school on time or not. So any feedback would be greatly appreciated, because Brenda and I are looking to do some work over the break.
Amy, is it the same students that are like tardy, or are we having this like same group of students that are absent?
It is definitely, there's some that are chronic, like come in right before recess, hit that 9 o'clock time. But we have a lot of students that are inconsistent in coming to homeroom, some that don't report to homeroom at all. And then I have some in my own homeroom that'll show up maybe 2 times a week for homeroom. There is a main group, which is why we wanted to provide opportunities. And then there's some parents, and even teachers that don't realize the parents aren't aware that they're coming late. We haven't made that connection that they were dropped off an hour earlier and they're going to a friend's house and all coming over later. So, that would really be helpful for us to get some information from parents as well.
Okay, just checking because we're pushing 270 vehicles coming in. I mean, we're clocking in that much vehicles in 30, 35-minute time frame. Sorry, Jessica, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just
no,
yeah.
That's great data. And I do know that most of them, because we see them get dropped off, that's how we've been able to catch them. Or the EAs know their bus riders, and because they're the ones that are there checking the students in for the wellness check, they'll let me know, so-and-so's been taking off. He gets off the bus and he disappears until 8:20. So that's been helpful, but we can't catch everybody. And so we really do just kind of want to do kind of a SWAT team kind of approach of, we're working with families, all the teachers and EAs are aware. We're trying to get you here and get you here on time. Go ahead, Jess.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, sorry, Sherry.
No, it's okay. Jessica, you go first.
Oh, sorry. I'm definitely on the opposite end of the spectrum, and I want more consequences, and I want like harsher, like things to not necessarily happen to the kids, but just more clear cut. And when I was in high school, I remember we used to have lockout. So as soon as the tardy bell rang, doors closed and they were locked, and kids had to go to somewhere, library or something, where they had to stay for the entire period, and it was their responsibility to go and get the work that they missed in class, as kind of like just what they had to do. And I remember at the start of it was really bad. Like it was really hard to like get kids into the groove of like coming to school on time. But after kind of like, again, like making it through those couple of weeks or whatever, attendance, like on time attendance, really started to shape up. So just a suggestion.
I think, well, I will tell you that from the trauma-informed and SEL training I've had, they do discourage that, although I know that's been used in the past. The other piece I would have a hard time with is just who's going to watch all these kids, because I know we would have quite a few that get here late. One of the biggest problems is they're getting here, maybe the last 20 minutes of class, and so they're missing almost that entire class, or they get here after that first class and get here just in time for recess. So we are trying to look at how can we, if a student gets here late, have them make up that time. So maybe it's just that you're, during you get here at recess. Okay, you get to come into the library or whatever room we have available during recess. You don't get your recess because you weren't in class this whole time. You can use that time to email your teacher, get in touch on what you missed, that type of thing. We're also looking at Tuesdays and Thursdays doing an after school detention for a minimum of an hour, because we're finding that the Wednesday, and that would be my other concern with teachers working in another room, or students, I mean, are in school suspension. Some of our kids are kind of like, oh, this is nice. I get to do my work in a nice quiet space on Wednesday instead of having to go to all my classes, because that is a bit of a struggle for some of our kids just to remain on track. So it's not necessarily being seen as a consequence because it's during their regular day when they're there anyway. They do lose their phone. So we're trying to inconvenience them a little bit more, take away their time after school or during recess or during lunch, times that they would maybe want to have instead. So we have to fine tune that though, and what that would look like so that we can have clear communication to students around that. But I know I want to start taking away a lot more of their time, and figuring out ways to do that, because they're taking their time and still honoring those kids that are struggling in the morning, having those conversations with parents. But it's not just, oh, I have a hard time getting up, or I like to be on my phone for an hour in the morning and eat my breakfast slowly. It's no, kids that truly do need that extra support, and maybe having some place where they can report to in the morning to encourage them to get there on time, but maybe not have to jump right into class right away, but still be at school. Sherry, go ahead.
I'm noticing it's a possibility that some of those kids, especially the kids that are showing up late for homeroom or not even coming into homeroom, I'm noticing that when I'm on my way to work, I'm noticing there's a lot of kids that are walking because there's only that one bus, and parents
Yeah.
work early, so they don't have that option to have a ride. So I notice a small amount of kids walking, and this is like after 8 o'clock. I'm on my way to work, and they're still pretty far from the school. So there's a possibility that a small chunk of those kids are not showing up for homeroom or showing up late because they're walking from a good distance to get to school because they don't have a ride. And that bus option with only one bus running might, that might be why, I think.
We
Could
could
be.
that's a really good point. Although I know within a certain range, they don't qualify for transportation anyway,
Mhm.
depending on how far they're walking from, and
Mhm.
encouraging them to leave earlier because they know how long it takes to get
Mhm.
to school.
Mhm.
Um, but we are trying to figure out, because you'll see that on another slide, transportation is not looking good. And I know Kalakahi, where my son goes, we're all the way in Waikoloa, and the bus gets, even though they had an additional bus, they've had no buses to Waikoloa for, half of the semester. And then they finally got a bus, but it's hit and miss. It might run out here 2 days out of the week. And so parents that were relying on that, then all of a sudden their kid can't make it to school. So we are fortunate at least to have that one, and that our kids aren't that far away for the most part, except some of our kids who are GE kids all the way down around Kawai High. But yeah, maybe that's something we need to poll on and find out, if that's still a situation why they're coming late. Crystal, I saw you raise your hand.
Just a little bit to add on to Sherry's. I think because I do also pass kids walking on the road. Another thing is the kids not having rides are calling ones with vehicles for rides. So
Are you
it's
getting
also
calls?
it's making them run late too, and some of them are actually needing to go to the middle school as well. So I don't know how much kids are there, but I know like my son kind of got caught in that a couple of times where friends needed rides last minute, or even needing, just helping to take some of the younger ones to the middle school.
And that's a good point. I have heard, not just for our kids that drive, but for parents as well, that they're trying to get their kids to all three schools, or they have kids at all three schools, plus they're helping neighbors and friends get their kids to school. So I have a good idea of which of those students that we've already followed up on, that they're just not getting out of bed, and then their guardian does bring them whenever they're ready. So we would definitely follow up with them differently, but I think it would be a good idea for us to look more specifically at those numbers and those students and maybe make some personal calls, find out what's going on and see how we can help. Or give them that opportunity to think about it and make it up. Any other thoughts around ideas? TJ says we could possibly be looking at making homeroom more attractive for students to come early. I agree. There were also some suggestions in previous meetings. I know Miss White, when she was teaching, she would offer kids even like raffle tickets, and when they came on time and they knew that they could possibly be drawn for a prize or some type of a privilege in her class for getting there on time. Okay. Oh, and sorry, it did say at the bottom of that, we do not have any encouraging updates on transportation at this time. It was part of our conversation at our principals meeting today. Um, we are fortunate that we still have one bus because Honokaa High, Intermediate, and Elementary, some days they get messages at the last minute that they have no transportation for anyone. So I am thankful we have that one. We still have some fine tuning to do, obviously, on how we're getting kids to school and making sure they just don't have any excuses as to why they're not getting to school and getting to school on time. All right. So looking at data and actually, talking a little bit about the needs of students. And I was talking at the principals meeting today too with our district social emotional learning educational officer, and she was talking about how incidences are just spiking and spiking a lot earlier this year. And I know that when I had talked with Miss Neatfield, we were talking about the behaviors during this quarter, and she said these are usually behaviors that we're seeing end of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter. And in looking at the complex data, the percentage of students needing a higher level of counseling, known as SBBH services at some high schools, has gone from single digits up to almost half of the school, 50% of the students. I know that our percentage has risen as well, not that great, but definitely jumped up as far as the number of students that are receiving SBBH services. One thing we did talk about, though, is that because we now have a full-time dedicated counselor, a lot of the things that those SBBH counselors are being asked to do, we're able to hit them at a lower level with Mrs. Henderson, and she's able to do some groups and do some restorative practices circles and try to hit some of these situations before they come too big and provide students with just that space where they can talk and work through problems. But so I did not know this when we did our fall social emotional learning survey with the students. This is the first year that this has been required statewide. We did this last year as one of the pilot schools, and then have done our first survey for social emotional learning in the fall. We have another one coming up after winter break, and then there'll be another one at the end of the year. And so the state is requiring that we send home the student results from the fall. And we had told students that this would be anonymous. And so I will say that because when we're looking at the data, we don't go through and pinpoint anybody. We try to look for school-wide trends. At the same time, we do have access to students that if there's some higher level of concerns, we're able to reach out to them to see how we can help and support them. So we were looking mostly for those school-wide trends. And so the reports that are coming home, even though they're child-specific, it just has the main categories that the students answer questions in, and it talks about if they're doing good in that area, what that means, if they're struggling in that area, what that means. It does not share their responses for each question. So there's a cover letter that's two-sided that goes with that. And so parents can look at the results from their child survey and then also look at what does this mean and what are some things that we can do at home to help build in some of these areas where students are struggling. And these are areas like students being able to problem solve and advocate for themselves, to be able to figure out what to do when they're having a hard time. So that's coming home in the mailing. as well as our Strive High data from last year. So this gives like our SBA scores in English and math, shows how we compare to the rest of the state, how many of our students were in distance learning, how many students took the test, so that you know what our results are a reflection of. Was it, the majority of the students were tested, and so it's a good showing of the results. Also shows like how many of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. So this year, instead of just being 1 page front and back, it's actually 2 pages front and back. It's a 4-page document. So all of that will be coming home this week ahead of the end of this quarter and semester. Hopefully it'll give some parents some good information, right? Because I know we need to look into having some opportunities for parents to have some training. Ross is going to be helping us with looking at some data results from a survey that was given. We didn't have as much family input as we would like, but we're going to be talking and doing some focus groups with students. And I know that from previous surveys that Partners in Development has done, we know that parents would like some additional information in some key areas, and we want to help them be a little more informed and feel like they have some tools at their disposal to help their students. Okay, anything before I get into a snapshot of our comprehensive needs assessment? All right. So as a Title I school, we are required to do a comprehensive needs assessment. And this is where we look at data from the last 3 to 5 years in key areas and kind of break it down to determine what's going well, what are our strengths, and what are our challenges. And so it is a requirement that we have to do because we receive federal funding. But the information and the data also is meant to help drive our financial and academic plan. So now that we're receiving this money based on our needs assessment, what are we going to put it toward? And this is the time of year where our salaried financial plan is due. We then have to put together an academic plan showing how we're going to help students, staff, and kind of the school community at large, and where that funding is going to be pinpointed. And so that funding has to align with our academic plan and what we're saying are our needs. So some of the key points, sorry, keep trying to go back and forth between both tabs. Some of the CNA is what it's called. Some of the CNA highlights include, right now we had 274 students at the beginning of the year, and at the time of the CNA, our enrollment was down to 256. Some of this is because we had students that went to distance learning, which was being offered at Honokaa High School. And all of those families have talked about wanting to come back either second semester, although we haven't heard from many of those families. And we now have a new variant that may be the reason for that, because these were families that had direct reasons that were related to older family members or health concerns in the home, that when those numbers started to spike, wanted to go to distance learning. But all did express a desire to come back at minimum next school year to be in person and still a part of Kohala High School. And while the average class size is manageable, many freshmen and especially math classes are averaging 25 plus students. Our social emotional learning skills decreased in all areas from the end of last year, with sense of belonging being our greatest challenge, remaining about the same, but it's still our greatest challenge. So it didn't go lower, which is good, but it's been our lowest scoring area for our students. Self-management was definitely our largest area for growth. And that was in comparison to how other students were showing in our complex, in the state, and in the nation. So in comparison to all of those areas was definitely our largest area for growth. And that's students being able to manage their emotions, manage themselves when they're struggling to organize everything that they need to do, knowing where to go for help emotionally and academically, and being able to do so independently. Some good news is that all stakeholders, teachers, students, and parents feel that school is a safe place to be. Students did feel that the rules were more clear when they took this survey, or when they took some of the surveys last year, but there's still 41.3% of students that are neutral regarding whether or not students who violate safety rules are disciplined. And that's a conversation we've been having with the staff lately as well. They see we're kind of fine tuning our consequences in the classroom so that when students do come to the office, it will be a lot more clear what those consequences are. I did explain to the staff recently that there are 5 factors that need to be taken into account when you are determining discipline. It cannot, and I think we've had this conversation here too, it cannot just be if you do this, then this happens. There's things we have to consider on an individual basis. But there can be some school-wide overall agreements that are known that for the most part, this is what's going to happen if you do this, if you're continuing to skip classes, if you're using inappropriate language in class. And all of that's going to be starting at the classroom level. So we'll be fine tuning that in semester 2 as well. Although we were not too much lower than the complex and state, we did have a decrease in our math achievement performance on SBA. We dropped an additional 9%, and we were already low in math. Having distance learning last year for math for a lot of our students just really made that a challenging area. We did have a low participation rate for the ACT that was made it difficult to utilize that as another source for scores because we had a handful, I think 10, maybe a little bit more of our juniors that took the ACT last year because it was not required. So a lot of challenges with distance learning last year. Last year was our iReady pilot year. This is our iReady pilot year, but so that makes it really difficult for us to fully interpret the initial results. We're using iReady so we can align a little bit better with the elementary and middle school because now we have scores for kids if they've been in our schools up in the complex from kindergarten, which is really helpful. But because we're just getting back to in-person learning, it's really tough to gauge, how serious the kids took it. We did not even have a really good return rate on our English and our math original scores. However, the average school-wide proficiency in ELA coming into school from this test, this what they call a universal screener, was 14%, and in math, 6%. So that means 14% of our students are proficient or higher in ELA according to this test, and 6% are proficient or higher in math. So some of our greatest areas of need include vocabulary, comprehension of literature and informational text, as well as algebra and geometry. So we are focusing on vocabulary for our ILT goal for the year. So it's a school-wide focus on vocabulary across all content areas. Unfortunately, algebra and geometry are the 2 classes that are required out of 3 math credits that students need to get. And so we really, overall, the CNA data shows that we really need to focus on academic rigor, really raising the what we're expecting from students in classes, getting them fully engaged in what they're learning, career and college readiness, and then just individual student growth. So what types of resources do we have? What types of things are we providing for those EL learners, those SPED learners, those learners that are not catching on to the concepts when we teach to the majority of the students in the class? How are we helping individual students grow? Thoughts around any of our CNA highlights? I tried to capture some of the main things for you because this is a large document, like over 30 pages.
I'd like to add a little bit of information regarding the ACT.
Sure.
Indicating there's very low participation. Last year, the results we had very few students participate because it was voluntary, first of all. And in the past, it has been mandatory for all juniors to take the ACT. Second of all, it was an online test, unlike a paper and pencil that they were more familiar with. And thirdly, the colleges were not requiring last year for students to take an ACT or an SAT test for admissions into colleges. And so all of those things factor into the low participation rate, and that includes not just ACT, but also SAT. Now, again, this year, the ACT will be mandatory, so the numbers of participation will be back on track. But colleges continue to say they are going to waive the ACT and SAT test scores, which means they don't necessarily need to use those test scores for admissions into college. And so this is happening again for this year, for the second year in a row.
And that is a really good point to bring up, Melody, because that's something we struggle with in classes. Our students want to know why. Why are they doing this? They aren't coming to homeroom because they feel like it doesn't count. If they ditch out on a class, it's a resource class that we're providing to try and help them have a time in the day where maybe they're successful and can just have fun and be with some friends or students, and but it doesn't count because they don't get a grade, and so that's what they'll choose not to do. So it really is challenging um, to help our students understand the importance of some of these things that maybe is not known right away or isn't reflected on their report card, how it's still important to them. And even just that, integrity and reflection of who they are as a person is important. Yeah. And what they're committing themselves to in their own personal growth. Any other thoughts about the CNA or the comprehensive needs assessment? Okay. I think we just have a few more things to go through then. Oh, my light is actually on a dimmer. I could have just turned it up. Okay, so in looking at our financial plan that's due next week and taking some of that information from the data, I just found out that, and my staff doesn't even know this, although my math department head knows I was trying to get this, we did apply for some reserve funds. So they're called WSF, or Weighted Student Formula reserve funds, that are left, and schools could apply if they felt they were short in some areas, or their budget was going to remain the same, but they were in need of additional positions, then you could apply for some reserve funds. And so we were approved for the majority of what I applied for, definitely enough for us to fund an additional math position, so that we can offer some more support classes for our students, but also lower that class size, which staff, teachers, and EAs were saying. And I was just observing in a math class the other day. The classes are way too large for the need of the students, number one. And also just for the physical size of our classes and the teachers being able to get around and EAs being able to get around and support everybody. And so I'm happy to say we'll be able to post for other teachers in the state, the whole state, but anywhere. And hopefully we'll get some good candidates before school ends to be able to expand on our math department a bit. We have 4 English teachers, but we only have essentially 2.5 math teachers right now because one of our math teachers is also our part-time tech coordinator. So this will definitely help with that. We're also looking, we're continuing with our academy structure, and we're going to be working to get more information out to the public as we work on our branding. So that includes our 4 pathways, with culinary working with our natural resources pathway. Sorry. And so, we initially thought that we may not have one of our pathway teachers funded. HCC has been paying for us to have a building and construction teacher. I just found out today, thanks to Miss Fern White and her persistence, and continuing to knock on that door saying, you're saying that this is important that we have CTE. So we need to try and support these schools. And so they will be supporting us by providing the funds for that teacher again next year. So part of the reserve funds that I applied for were to fund that teaching position. So we'll be discussing as a staff how to best utilize that funding based on what was in our CNA and the overall needs of the school. Sorry, I need to go get a quick drink. We are also bringing back our VP position for next year, and then also looking at some funding for continuing with after school activities. One thing I will say about our academy and attendance and, our continuation with this couple of things that we've seen. We started with our students who are now juniors. We're kind of part of that pilot program. And we really saw their time in school increase. They wanted to be in school. They were vested in their projects and things that they were doing. Um, Looking right now at our attendance data, there's this great chart that shows like last year at this time of the year, and it breaks it down by grade level. And the year before, I think it does for 4 years, and then this year. And by all of the grade levels, 9, 10, and 12, the attendance percentage is lower this year than it was last year and the year before. Our 11th graders have consistently shown a higher percentage of students that are attending school. And I think I don't have any straight proof right now, but they have just shown since we started this that they are a little more invested in what they're doing because of the start that they got with these pathways, and teachers really working to understand their strengths and where their interests lie and building that into other content areas as well. So it was just an interesting piece as I was, researching for some attendance data for today's meeting. That yeah, our 11th graders continue to show a higher level percentage of attendance than the other grades, but also in compared to previous years. So we do have a couple of after school clubs that are starting, and it really is giving a chance for students who do not necessarily have other ties into school, especially if they're not tied in through athletics, to have something meaningful and fun for them to do. And regardless of if there's 3 kids, 8 kids, or 10 kids, it's valuable time that kids are spending right now. So I'm happy that we're able to do that and hope that we can just continue to expand on that as well. All right, almost there. Last slide. And we love it when families get involved. So please, if you can share with anyone, all 3 principals in Kohala will have their next coffee talk. I put Kohala Complex Principals meeting, but we call it our coffee talk, which is going to be next Wednesday. And we're starting it a little bit later. We're starting at 10 o'clock. So that's open. We send out the link to our staff so that students and teachers can log in at that time as well. We'll just be giving some updates, talking about some things that each school has been doing over the last semester and some things to get families ready for next semester, as well as travel updates and things like that that pertain to the whole complex. And the login information can be found on all of our social media sites, actually for any of the schools. And Ross is usually pretty good. We'll probably try and get out some flyers. Ross has been great about reminding me and working with Brenda to get some little flyers to parents as they come through parent pickup and drop off of anything that we want to make sure they're aware of.
I got it taken care of. So all I got to do is hand it all next week.
All right. Thanks, Ross. All right. And that's it for my part. I know there's a few more things. Thank you for your patience as we went through all of that. And feedback.
Thanks, Ms. Stafford. Looking at the agenda, I know that you put the school parent compact was completed in November's meeting, and the final copy will be shared during semester 2 via social media, school website, and in first day packets for the 22-23 school year. So moving on to our agenda, we really don't have any new business that we need to discuss or cover for the month of December. So I want to go ahead and move over to announcements, and I want to turn it over to Miss Iris.
Hello. Well, as most of you know, we had our this week is Spirit Week, so tomorrow's our last day. Tomorrow, our dress up day is Christmas cast, which essentially just means Christmas related characters, so Santa, reindeers, elves, anything Christmas related. Our assembly was scheduled for tomorrow, but has been postponed to next week Friday because students and teachers felt like they needed that extra PLO, which is completely understandable. So we don't have an issue like moving that. It gives us more time to prepare. So yeah. So I'm glad that they will be getting that extra time that they need and that we can still have our assembly. So in replacement, since we're not having an assembly, we talked today in our student council meeting that we will have a game tomorrow to kind of make up for not having an assembly. Yeah, so a lot of things to look forward to during the assembly. We hope you guys enjoy it. We have had a lot of good feedback from past assemblies and spirit weeks and games and everything. It's been great to hear your guys' feedback and students just enjoying themselves again and just feeling a little bit more normal instead of just having to do schoolwork all the time. And so we're really glad that we get the chance and that Mrs. Stafford is, giving us the thumbs up to do what we are doing. So we're very thankful. We also are starting to plan for when we return. The basketball season is starting, and this year we plan on doing homecoming based around basketball season this year. So we're already starting to plan those things. So proposals will be coming very soon.
Great,
That kind
Iris.
of aligns nicely with Space Jam, yeah? You guys have done a great job, and the games have been really fun, but they always take into consideration spacing people out and making sure that they're safe if they're going to be doing anything that involves eating. And teachers are still doing Spirit Week next week. Ours is kind of a countdown to winter break, so maybe I should share with you some of the dress-up days we have for next week. Students could still participate and then end with the assembly on Friday. I think it'll be a great way to take us off in the winter break. You guys have done a really good job.
Thank you.
Yeah. Kudos to Student Council. Moving on to another announcement, high school student pickup and drop-off location. Ms. Stafford, do you want to kind of like touch base on that?
Actually, I can let Ross touch base on that, and then maybe you can even share a little bit about the guest that's coming to the coffee talk, Ross.
Yeah. So perfect. Thank you. The after school traffic has been getting better. I mean, TJ, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been getting better. It seems like the students are understanding the pathway that they need to take in order to cross over the street and then cross through the two gates. One thing that I've noticed is that there's parents who are parking now by Rainbow Cafe and waiting for their child there. So that sort of holds up the traffic going out because they're trying to get out, and then it's causing the other cars to wait and let those cars come out. So one of the things that we're discussing is making the pickup officially by the cafeteria roundabout for the high school students, so that because everyone has to go there anyway, that it will create less students from walking across the street and walking over to Rainbow Cafe. I don't know if that's going to work, but we're going to give it a try, and then I'll give feedback to Amy or Mrs. Stafford. And then the guest speaker for Coffee Talk is coming from Helco. They're going to be giving an update on the Kohala electricity and the power grid and battery backup system. So our guest speaker will be sharing about how they're just giving an update on how to improve Kohala's electricity in Kohala, so that when our power goes out, they have a backup system to kick it back on. So that is for next week Wednesday as well. So thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Ross. And I don't think I have or we have anything else to cover. So anyone kind of leave it open now, open discussion. Anybody has any concerns, comments, questions they want to bring up? Now's the time. Seeing that there's none, our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 13th. So wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And if I can get a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. It's been moved. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Sherry. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourned our meeting.